It's called a promo, kid.
Shut your
and
mouth,
if you want to
John.
be the big dog, you're going to have to learn how to do it. So go ahead.
You ready? No! I said, are you ready?
That was good. Glad you finally decided to pull that giant stick out of your butt and have some fun for once in your life.
You're uneducated marks! You sit there on your phones tweeting out your opinions like they're worth a damn. Let me explain something to you people. You don't know shit!
And I'd like to think that maybe this company will be better after Vince McMahon's death.
Okay, annoying audio coming in 3, 2. This is what we're opening with here. It's a precursor to the episode, believe it or not. This is a young woman in the 40s wrestling under the name Mildred Byrne. She's actually the precursor to who we're going to be talking about today.
Oh, God.
Fabulous Moolah episode, finally. It's been in the through the table notes for quite a while, or at least the list, I should say. We wanted to knock this one out. It's quite a fucked story, although fundamentally, sound match. 2-minute classic for sure, but fundamentally, why didn't they continue to let the women wrestle like this? Because they're in there getting it.
They are. I mean, you just kicked her, grabbed them, and said, "Get them out of here."
Now, Mildred Byrne is, again, like I said, the precursor to who we're actually talking about today, the Fabulous Moolah, but apparently it all starts back here. This is how far back it actually goes in women's wrestling.
Damn, monkey flips?
That's what I said. I said, what a monkey flip. Look at this one. Rolled her. Is that like a 4 count? He gave her a good old 4 count? Alright, shout out to Stunned by Wrestling for the video we're going to be using today on Through the Table to go through this. And I'm going to let you know now, you haven't seen it, I have. It gets just as dark as you think it does.
Of a certain age.
Back it up to the start, please. You like my phone holder? My nephew gave me this.
Certain age, any mention of the Fabulous Moolah will trigger fond memories of the Attitude Era and the crass, often hilarious tag
Stunned by Wrestling.
between Moolah.
Be sure to go check them out.
They were a couple of elder stateswomen of pro wrestling's bygone era. In my teenage mind, they must have existed in the dark ages before WrestleMania 1, which was as early as my knowledge of American
I couldn't take a sip of
wrestling
water when
ever
you said
went.
the dark ages.
I knew that Moolah was with Leilani Kai in her match against Wendy Richter.
Wendy Richter. Remember Tony Storm called Wendy Richter out recently?
Yes.
Anything before 1984 wasn't available on VHS, and so I had no frame of reference about wrestling in that era. WWE did little to explain the cultural impact.
They didn't say shit. They didn't say a damn thing.
Funny
That's
and
how
shocking
much they cared.
moments
I love
during
this
the
spot.
Attitude Era, such as when Mae Young was powerbombed by Bubba Ray Dudley through a
I
table
love that
at
spot.
the age of 77, and when the Fabulous Moolah won the Women's Championship at the age of 76.
I actually do not
Many
remember
of us
that moment.
didn't know their histories, and in the case of the Fabulous Moolah, there was some aspects of her real-life history that very few people knew about. Dark, criminal parts of her history that she managed to keep under lock and key until the day that she died.
Beating the crap out of her. Let's go.
Oh. Pause the screen. That's a Wendy Richter quote. She hurt me anytime she could, and I realized that early on, she was an evil person, and I didn't ever want to be around her.
That's... Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah. Oh, man, it does get really dark here.
Nah, it's fine.
But back to fundamentals. Women used to wrestle really fucking sound, and like, what happened? I mean, sex appeal happened.
The Attitude Era, yeah.
Yeah. Wrestling's most disgraceful woman.
The Fabulous Moolah was born as Lillian Ellison in 1923. Her mother passed away young at the age of just 40 years old. Moolah's father tried to take her mind off the death of her mother by taking her to wrestling matches. Moolah saw female wrestling legend Mildred Burke and was inspired to become a wrestler herself.
There's context.
I think I actually accidentally said Burn. It's Burke. If I did say Burn, I'm so sorry. It's Burke.
In the 1940s, Moolah joined the wrestling business under the tutelage of Mildred Burke and her husband, Billy Wolfe. Very quickly, the inner workings of the business became clear to Moolah as she witnessed
Face of evil.
Wolfe run his world of
That's a face of evil right there. That's an evil-ass face with some evil-ass glasses.
women's wrestling as a kind of cartel, as he pimped out his girls to other promoters for sexual favours in return for favourable booking. It was also expected that the girls in Wolfe's school would gratify him sexually. Moolah decided that she didn't want any part of being pimped herself. Unhappy with her rejection, Wolfe told Moolah that she was too small to wrestle anyway and should go and be a secretary instead. Moolah's hopes to become a wrestler were almost scuppered there and then, as so few promoters at the time saw the value in promoting women. It appeared it was either Wolfe's way or the highway. On Wolfe, Moolah would later say, "To my way of thinking, he was a despicable human being. Even so, I knew I had to deal with him, at least at first, to realise my dream." Moolah eventually broke away from Wolfe and met her future husband, the wrestler Buddy Lee. They both moved down to Columbia, South Carolina, and opened their own training ground after making a deal with a local promoter to use their talent. There were early signs of the character that Moolah would become, as her only daughter, Mary Carroll, brought charges of neglect against her mother for forcing her to wrestle while she was unwell as a 15-year-old teenager.
Oh, you gotta pay to play with the ads, and you know the rules. But yeah, really fucking dark shit going in.
Fun fact, I didn't know any of this.
You didn't know any of it going in at all?
No.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get right back into it.
The relationship between Moolah and Buddy Lee was rocky, full of passion. It was half business partnership and half tumultuous love affair. Shockingly, despite all of her prior complaints, Moolah would allegedly use the same tactics employed by Mildred Burke and Billy Wolfe when running her own school.
Wait, so you thought it was messed up and decided, oh, I'm going to do it too.
Yes.
I mean, I get it, because when you find something that works, you keep doing it.
They're like, well, this apparently is the only way that we can get favorable booking, so we're going to use the same tactic to our advantage. And
it's unfortunate, but at the same time, I do blame her, but I also can see why she would do it.
that's exactly what I was about to say in a more stern sense, is like you 50% understand it and 50% don't understand it at all, because again, you can't understand why anybody would do that, but then you see what they went through to get to that point and you're like, damn. Still,
She readily
it gets
admitted
deeper,
to
believe it
taking
or
the
not.
nickname Moolah thanks to her preoccupation with making lots of money, and both she and
Moolah.
Lee were utterly cutthroat in the way they ran their business
means
and
money.
the way they treated the women who were learning from them. Moolah and Buddy Lee took all of the bookings for their stable of women and made sure to skim a handsome percentage off the top for themselves. The exact fee would vary. None of the girls knew exactly what they'd been paid by a promoter on any given night, and some speculated that as much as 50% of their earnings were taken by Moolah and Lee. With all of the money being made by scraping the girls' pay packets, the school expanded in no time, starting
money
out
from them
with
too.
Moolah training the women on mattresses, on
They're pimping them out, they're taking their money,
They're training them on mattresses. Well,
and again, I'm telling you, as somebody who has already watched the video, just to again pre-approve it before we just play it live on air, I cannot stress enough, it actually gets deeper than this, but it's just crazy to think about the way of thinking you enter here.
kitchen floor of a tiny house before
Moolah drive.
growing into an entire compound with its own gym and full-sized wrestling ring. One of the most disturbing allegations to come out of Moolah's school was that of Sweet Georgia Brown, real name Susie Mae McCoy, one of the first African-American female wrestlers. McCoy was trained in her early 20s
I don't think this like viles or warrants a sensitivity warning, but it is about to get seriously fucked up here. Just heads up, it's about to get very, very fucked up. Just
I can only imagine.
yeah.
Moolah, McCoy wanted to provide a better life for herself and her 12 siblings at home, but in the end, her life was robbed of everything by Moolah and Buddy Lee. McCoy had huge potential, massive natural talent in the ring, and Buddy Lee saw huge potential in her. He looked to promote so-called Negro lady wrestlers, which was black on black female grapplers, a curiosity for fans at a time when segregation was still in effect. As
Yeah.
Buddy Lee
This is
signed
height of
McCoy up to
segregation
a
era.
contract, she left her family behind in Columbia, South Carolina. That included her siblings and her only child at the time, a 2-year-old boy, as she went on the road. McCoy's life would change forever for the worse as she left her family behind and entered the clutches of Moolah.
Look at that sick ass face too. Like, fuck that guy, dude. Fuck that guy.
It looks like his eye.
He looks like evil.
Buddy
Those
Lee.
two.
In an interview, her son Michael recounted, "Every time my mother went on the road, she'd come back pregnant. One of my aunties said, every time you come back home, you come back with one of these half and half white kids, and we got mistreated for years growing up because of our colour. Within their own home, the children were abused by relatives and called half-breeds, forced to sleep in a closet, while their cousins slept in proper beds. Michael himself was..."
See, it's so fucked up. Again, just impregnating this woman over and over, and then leaving the kids, a dozen of them, mind you, to just be treated like shit because, again, they're mixed
They're
breed.
not- yeah.
Such a different time, and I'm glad we've gotten farther away from that, and I know that there's still so much work to be done in that area of the world. It's just, that's why it's one of those things where you gotta pause it and question, do we need to issue the sensitivity warning or not, because it's reality.
I unfortunately, that's a gray area as well. But it sucks. It's super disheartening to hear something like this happen. Which, I mean, we know stuff like this happens all the time. There's stuff like that we don't even know about. That still happens today.
Fuck Buddy Lee.
All
Yeah.
of those mixed-race children conceived by McCoy while she was away from home with Moolah and Buddy Lee. It is speculated amongst those children, now adults, that their father was more than likely Buddy Lee himself, who raped their mother on a regular basis. In return, Buddy Lee wrote dynamic, praise-filled
That does deserve sensitivity warning.
That I was about to say, yeah.
promo pieces for his unique attraction sent into newspapers and television stations across the region. Lee described McCoy as 145 pounds of ebony beauty who left the cotton fields of South Carolina. He wrote that there would be no more pots and pans for Georgia and no more long hours in the South's tobacco and cotton fields. He went on to say that she was a credit to her race, who was now enjoying the pleasures and luxuries that money earned by being a girl wrestler could bring.
This motherfucking piece of shit, dude. This is through the table.
Racist as fuck.
I'll put this motherfucker through the flaming table. Oh my gosh, dude. I already knew that was coming, and it still lit a fire under my ass.
It's very infuriating.
That's racist, is what
A
that is.
disgusting
No,
and
there's no
exploitative
grey
way
area
of
on
describing
that sort of
another human
racism.
being, if ever there was one. The newspaper pieces were signed off
Also
as
a
the
lie.
top attraction from Buddy Lee Promotions. Heartbreakingly, McKay would later disclose to her daughter Barbara that while she was living with Moolah and Buddy Lee, she was raped and forced to take drugs until she was addicted. Moolah would only leave Buddy Lee when she found him in their bed with one of the girls. Moolah threw him out, and some of the girls, including Susie Mae McCoy, left with him.
Piece of trash.
That's even worse.
He's a garbage man. Hey, you shut up. I knew the ad was coming. You saw me jump because I knew the ad was coming.
Yeah, you did, and you still.
Couldn't make it in time.
This is incredibly fucked.
I knew the context of the subject going in. Oh, we're right back to it.
Moolah had grown to become
I
wrestling's
knew the
most powerful
context
woman
of the
in a business.
subject going in, but I obviously didn't know how much depth there was to it. There was a reason it was in the list of topics before I even looked this deep into it. I didn't even know who Mildred Burke was before this.
Right.
And it kind of actually took me into a whole separate wormhole of watching wrestling from the 40s, just how weird of a time it was. But yeah,
that's unfortunately one of the only good things I think
there was a legit reason why this was in the list of through the table topics. And again, this isn't just a through the table. This is a flaming table spot right here. This motherfucker deserves hell on earth, and I'm gonna be the one to raise it.
That was already tough to crack. Moolah stood as the gatekeeper to the entire women's industry. Moolah charged her trainees up to $300 rent per month and reportedly skimmed 50% off their pay from the shows they wrestled on. Eventually, Moolah's school had grown to become a 40-acre living compound, where the girls were taught by Moolah, lived on Moolah's property, and in some cases were pimped out by Moolah. Janine Meerset wrestled in the 1980s and was trained by the Fabulous Moolah. Don't call her a madame, it sounds too elegant. She was a pimp. It was a symptom of her need to make money at all costs.
Like she really lived that Moolah gimmick.
She vowed never to be poor again. In hindsight, we can see that Moolah used all of the same techniques as human traffickers.
And yeah, she literally got so obsessed with never going broke again that she would do anything to make sure it wasn't being done to her.
I mean, I've been there. I've been in that situation.
But you can't pimp out women.
Yeah, it's still messed up.
It's like these are people's lives. These are human lives. Yeah, she's fucked up for that, regardless of the reason.
Yeah,
she's fucked up.
Workers were forced to live in the house that was owned by her. All of her workers' pay had to go through her, and she sexually exploited them. Meerset went on to account how Moolah would send girls out to a friend to model for photos. I talked to the guy on the phone. He implied he would expect certain things from me. I said no.
No way,
Linda
Jose.
Vachon also independently backed this up in a 2002 interview, claiming that when she was just 16 years old and training at Moolah's compound, she was sent out of state to be photographed by an old man. Sandy Parker was a lesbian trainee of Moolah's who has since claimed that Moolah forbade her from visiting gay bars or having same-sex relationships with other women. Parker was enraged when Moolah tried to force her into dating men, especially considering that Moolah was also allegedly engaging in sex with other women at the time.
Such a fucking hypocrite.
That's incredibly fucked.
A bigot and a hypocrite. She's a bigotcrit.
A bigotcrit.
She is a bigotcrit. This Fabulous Moolah.
I can't believe this.
Dude, it just continues to get more fucked and more fucked and more fucked.
Moolah's trainees was Vicky Otis. Before Otis got to Moolah's training ground, she'd already learned how to wrestle. However, her local promoter was having a hard time booking his talent onto cards, thanks to Moolah's stranglehold on the business at the time. The promoter told Otis that he'd no other choice but to reluctantly send her to Moolah. Her reputation preceded her. She said, "I still remember a friend of mine telling me, don't go to Moolah's, find a job, get on your feet, just don't go to Moolah's. I was warned, but I just wanted to wrestle so bad."
Taking advantage of people who are so passionate about the business.
And
damn.
Again, doing a dive into some of these women and finding whatever footage I can on some of these women, I truly believe that if it wasn't for the Fabulous Moolah, or if there was just some change at the point in this history of women's wrestling, she was gonna be somebody. She would have been somebody. That's why I said this is fucking sad.
Maybe we gotta throw her in a matchbox.
Yeah, dude, that would be a crazy matchbox. I'm actually down for that. But when you see what we're actually watching on Matchbox this week, you'll fucking flip and trip. I'm not ready to get back into this, but I have to.
Arriving at Moolah's compound and noticing the huge gates surrounding the property. After dark, if you weren't home and you weren't working, you got locked out. Like. Otis recalled breaking her neck during a match in 1984. After a few days in the hospital with a neck brace, Otis was taken back to Moolah's compound. Moolah made Otis take bumps in the ring to test her. After a couple of months, Moolah realised the extent of Otis's injury and the fact that she would not be able to pay up for her rent. Moolah tried to pimp Otis out to a promoter so she could pay her rent and her school fees. Moolah looked at me and said, "The nicer you are to him, the the nicer he'll be to you. What else can I say? When Otis refused the advances of the promoter, Moolah became extremely angry, knowing that she couldn't make any money out of her. She dumped me, and I never wrestled again. According to Otis, Moolah lied to the other women at the compound
and you heard him say before that too, and again, I'll back it up with my own research, but you heard him say before that too, she already had experience and stuff before going into this.
Yeah.
This was a woman who actually, like I said, could wrestle and probably was one of the best up-and-coming women's wrestlers at the time. And I wasn't there at the time. This is decades before my history.
Right.
But yeah, she was somebody. She was going to be somebody.
Told them that Otis had been sent to prison for dealing cocaine. Moolah couldn't let the other girls know that Otis had broken her neck and was no longer used to her going forward, as that would have revealed her true motives. Moolah held her iron-like grip on the women's wrestling industry, not only at her school, but also in the ring. She held on to the women's championship as if her life depended on it. This created a glass ceiling for the very women she was training. Moolah had control of her part of the business from the top to the bottom. However, Wendy Richter almost managed to smash through that ceiling.
That's what's crazy.
In the mid-1980s, Vince McMahon could see the potential in women's wrestling and started to build his roster of female talent. Richter quickly emerged as one of the best, most charismatic women of the bunch. And there was immediate jealousy from Moolah towards the young, hot upstart. Moolah was advancing in age, and she could see the advancing threat from the better-looking, more talented woman. With Vince McMahon actively looking to expand the women's scene, Moolah wondered how long she could stay on top of the female part of the business, both on screen.
What are you going to do to stay on top? I'm afraid to know.
Had a vision of making Wendy Richter the female version of Hulk Hogan. Even Moolah had never reached those heights. Richter told McMahon that she didn't want to live with Moolah any longer, and she certainly didn't want her paycheck going to her. McMahon agreed to pay her directly, and Moolah was furious. The wrestling boom of the 1980s exploded as WWE converged with pop culture. Cyndi Lauper came on board and sided with Richter as a manager for a WrestleMania match against Leilani Kai. Kai had Moolah on her side. Thanks to exposure from Lauper, Richter entered the mainstream as she appeared on MTV and in WWE's very popular cartoon series. For a time, Richter was the most famous women's wrestler in the world.
Let me tell you something, brother.
Won the WrestleMania match and the women's championship, and despite still having to feud with Moolah for the rest of the year, it felt as though the women's revolution had started. One thing that hadn't changed, however, was
you want to talk about a revolution?
More money, considering that she was the women's champion, but McMahon had other ideas. On November the 25th, 1985, Richter was booked in a match against the Spider, an unspecified masked woman. Richter immediately knew that it was Moolah under the mask. All I knew was, with Moolah, I've got to look out for myself, Richter said in an interview. She'll try to hurt you, she'll try to pin you, and I knew she couldn't pin me, she couldn't, but what I didn't count on was the referee getting paid off. In what would be the original screw job, Moolah rolled Richter into a small package. Richter kicked out at 1, but the referee counted 3, and with that, Moolah was once again women's champion.
Wow, that's...
And the women's
You think Brett got screwed, man? What the fuck was that?
That was incredibly obvious. Like, holy fuck. Imagine if they
Y'all not even trying with kayfabe.
Imagine if they had the internet back then.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Back then, they protected kayfabe like it was life or death. And you're going to tell me that you just let that shit slide? Come on, Vinnie Mac.
Women's wrestling
was finished. It would be decades before women's wrestling would be taken seriously again by WWE. Wendy Richter was a...
My man's saying, and he's not totally wrong here. Again, shout out Stunned by Wrestling. Great channel to have backed this episode. That is what stunted the women's revolution that ultimately had started back then. Here we are.
That's crazy,
decades later.
Eventually blackballed from wrestling, and she wouldn't return to WWE until 2010, when she was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Mary Lillian Ellison died aged 84 in November 2007, but it would be many years before her alleged history was exposed to the masses. When WWE decided to introduce a women's battle royal at WrestleMania in 2018, named after the Fabulous Moolah, there was outrage.
Yes, because nobody actually knew this history, myself included, until WWE said, we're going to make the Fabulous Moolah Battle Royal, and then some shit started getting dug up.
Yeah, that's how it normally goes.
All of this history was turned over, laid bare for the first time. WWE had tried to put their spin on Moolah as being a trailblazer for women's equality in wrestling. However, the allegations against her said otherwise. Pressure from sponsors and mainstream journalists forced WWE to
Flipping her
drop the
off.
tribute.
I'm flipping her off in the studio right now.
If all of those allegations are true, then Moolah held back the evolution of women's wrestling for literally decades. And it wouldn't be until years after
She's a
her
pioneer,
death that
they
women's
said.
wrestling will be looked upon again
The irony.
with any respect at all.
And you know what's funny? This might be a little aside. I always said if they ever did a battle royal, I didn't even know this happened, by the way.
Wow, yeah, because I think you had taken a break during this
Yeah,
period.
so I had said if they ever do a battle royale, they should name it after China, because that's the least that they owe her.
I was about to say, they owe her.
That's the least that they owe her. But now that I know this, I don't know if even China would want her name associated to a battle royal.
Yeah.
That's the history, God.
But they definitely owe it to her, like you said. And I'm glad you got to learn this actual dark side of the ring and get to hear
It basically was, yeah. Like, that's incredibly messed up, and I'm very upset as someone who. It's no secret at this point. I really enjoy women's wrestling.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of my favorite wrestlers are women. So.
It's so great to see how far the women have come in the past decade alone. And again, the concept of this episode being a woman who was known as a trailblazer and pioneer for that actually is one of the sole reasons its growth got stunted to begin with.
That's crazy. I can only imagine what would have happened had she not.
A whole other alternate universe. And
boom.
I'm glad we didn't need a part 3 for this one. We didn't need a 3-part series.
Part 2. Yeah, we didn't
that
need
Benoit series was crazy, but there was a lot to it.
Yeah.
The CM Punk series this season got crazy, but there was 2 parts to it. The Fabulous Moolah, Buddy Lee, everybody involved in the whole prostitution ring of women's wrestling deserves to get put through the table.
It definitely it makes you wonder about how much things have actually changed, because we hear it all the time about things that happened. There was the big UK Me Too movement, with a lot of UK wrestlers, which still, like, some allegations still haven't been disproven or proven.
Yeah.
So it just makes you wonder.
It just makes you wonder. Well, fuck them. I'm glad we could get through this relatively quickly. It's probably the shortest through the table we've done, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it was just kind of so a little quick and a little interesting to throw to you guys.
Yeah, it was in the list for a while, and I'm not going to let people keep walking around thinking this woman was a trailblazer.
No, I'm definitely not.
Blazer through the flaming tables. I wonder where she's at now.
Fire.
Flight after flight